that, and they'll continue to do so. But cross-government, we have a bigger responsibility to provide confidence to British Columbians that the economy will be coming back to something resembling normal in the very near term. Many other provinces have announced plans, and we will be certainly doing that as well next week, and I'll do some foreshadowing of that today. But the first order of business in Cabinet today was re-establishing the state of emergency for another 2 weeks. I know that everyone's looking forward to resuming normal activities, spending more time with loved ones who have been separated over the past number of weeks, and we want to see that as well. But it's going to take resolute action by all of us to ensure that we continue to make progress rather than give up the progress that has been so hard fought for over the past month and a half. So what will the new normal look like? It'll be guided, of course, by the science and the work of public health officials. And it will be a phased-in approach, as other provinces are doing. But it'll be different in British Columbia because, unlike other provinces, we resisted the call for a full lockdown of our economy and instead adopted a different approach. The approach in British Columbia was to focus on how could we keep sectors operating safely rather than shutting them down until such time as we could open them up again. Good example just this week was the tree planting season is upon us. We're going to have silviculture activity across British Columbia, critically important to our forest sector, critically important to our forests that we start replanting in this critical time in the year. So we put in place plans to have a safe operation of the tree planting season. In agriculture, we put in place safe operating procedures for those temporary foreign workers that are coming to help get our farming sector going, and also other practices to make sure that our food supply is safe. We've had a number of incidents where food processing plants have been hit by COVID-19. Now, I appreciate that the vast majority, in fact, all of those plants are federally regulated. The federal inspection agencies that take care of the safety of our food supply when it comes to meat has been the center point of that activity. We've been working cooperatively with the federal government to protect that food supply, and I want to encourage all British Columbians and assure them that we are doing what we can to make sure that there's cooperation with everyone concerned to protect our food supply. But it's not just farming, it's not just silviculture and tree planting. In the construction sector, this week, Quebec announced that they were going to reopen their construction sector in the middle of May. We never shut down our construction sector, and that was a calculated choice that we made based on the work of WorkSafe and the Public Health Office to put in place guidelines for the safe operation of construction sites. So although we haven't had 100% participation within the construction sector, many activities have continued as before in a safe manner. We expect that to continue as well. So as we open up sectors, we're also asking people to come up with their ideas of how they can best operate. And I want to, again, as I did last week, give credit to the restaurant sector who are putting in place plans so they can operate safely. It's not just going to be the flick of a switch, as I said last week, and I'm saying again today. The consuming public has to be comfortable and confident when they go into a restaurant that they are going to be safe. Similarly, workers in that sector need that confidence as well. And the only way we build that confidence is to have a set of common protocols, common guidelines in place to protect workers, in place to protect consumers. We've seen this in the grocery sector and other retail operations where procedures and protocols and guidelines have been put in place to protect workers, of course, but also to protect the consuming public. That will not change as we outline our plans next week. In fact, that will be the foundation of the plan. How can you operate safely? How can we ensure that there are processes and guidelines in place so the public has confidence that they can once again get back to a regular schedule of consumption, whether that's to be buying goods and services, whether it's to spend more time on the leisure activities that are so important to all of us. In order for that to happen, we need to have a plan, and we need to have full buy-in from all British Columbians. So rather than go headlong into a let's start up again tomorrow, we're focusing instead on a slow, methodical, phased-in approach. Yesterday, Minister Fleming talked about the education sector and how we're going to keep our K-12 system operating in the interests of kids, in the interests of teachers, as well as the parents and families that depend on that system so that they can go to work. As more people go to work, the need to ensure that children are safe is going to increase. That means childcare will become more focused. That means K-12 will become more focused, but it will be done in a different way. We don't anticipate a regular return to education as we know it until into September. But we do expect a gradual increase in the number of students in classrooms, and we're working with all of the stakeholders, whether they be support staff, teachers, administrators, trustees, to make that happen. Always focusing on what's in the best interest of British Columbians, as you would expect us to do and as we are committed to doing. There's a whole host of other issues. I know there'll be many questions, but I wanted to just say finally that British Columbians have made great progress. We are the envy of the country. I'm involved in conference calls with other premiers and the Prime Minister on a regular basis, and every single call focuses on how well we are doing here in British Columbia. And they say, well done, John, and I say, no, it's not about me, it's about the people of BC who put the interests of all of us ahead of their personal interests. By staying home, by not coming to work when you're sick. No more of this heroic, I've got a bit of a sniffle, but I'll make it through. That cannot be the way we proceed in the future. Critical to our success will be everybody understanding that if you are not well, you should not go to the workplace. And we need to make sure as a society we're putting in place protections for those workers so they don't feel an economic imperative to go into the workplace. Instead, they feel that they're doing their part to get us out of the COVID-19 pandemic by staying home, by making sure they check their symptoms and they consult healthcare professionals in the interest of not just themselves, but their workplace and their broader community. Those are the tasks ahead of us. They're daunting, but we've made great progress to this point in time, and I have every confidence that we'll be continuing to have that success as we reopen our economy starting next week. Happy to take any questions you may have. I think Jen's on that.
A reminder to reporters on the line, please press *1 to get into the queue and unmute your microphones. You won't be audible till I call your name. Our first question is from Tanya Fletcher.
Hi, Premier. Central One's latest economic forecast says BC's GDP is set to plummet by 7.3% in 2020, and that BC tourism will remain in, quote, a deep funk into 2021. So given that, and also last week seeing, the price of oil fall to extraordinary lows, given all that, how much can your economic recovery task force, how much of the economy can it actually recover given those outside forces?
Well, certainly the indicators are dark for the foreseeable future, but those same projections for a constriction of the economy in 2020 show a robust rebound in 2021, a some 6% growth rate projected for British Columbia from most of the private sector forecasters. So I'm looking to the horizon, hopefully, that we can endure this difficult time, and that's why we're joining with the federal government, putting in place programs to help people get through this difficult period with significant stimulus, whether it be the federal CERB program, whether it be the emergency worker program that is eligible, people will be eligible for effective Friday of this week, helping people with their rent, whether they're a commercial operation or they're individuals. These are things that will help us get through this shrinking of the economy. But we will also need to ensure that we're focused on how do we welcome the world to British Columbia again when it comes to tourism, and how do we ensure that people will want to buy our products again. If it were just British Columbia that was seeing this constraints in the economy and the reduction in growth, that would be one thing. But it is everywhere in the world that's seeing these same negative numbers. So although we have quality wood products and a whole host of other things that the world have been buying from us for a long, long time, the world has stopped buying. British Columbians have stopped buying, and so therefore we're going to see a reduction in economic growth. But we do continue to have a dynamic, diverse workforce, multilingual, multicultural. We have a tech sector that is extraordinary. We have a film and television industry that can, I believe, come back more quickly than in other places because of the good work of British Columbians in keeping our curve on growing number of confirmed cases to a minimum. These are the types of things that investors look at when they're looking at now freeing up their dollars when we look at recovery and stimulus into the late summer and early fall. And that's where we're focusing our efforts. Keep in mind, Carol James put aside $1.5 billion for stimulus that we are not touching until we get into a place where people start to have more confidence, not just here in BC, but around the world, that the economy is on the rebound. And so we're watching those indicators closely, Tanya, and they're concerning, but they're concerning in every corner of the world, and therefore we can take some comfort from that.
Our next question is from Binder Sajan.
Hi, Premier. As you know, in BC, non-essential businesses can open if they abide by the guidelines set out by the provincial health officer. So I'm wondering if there's a shop that's thinking, hey, I can abide by those guidelines. Maybe it makes sense for me to reopen. Do they do that now, or do they wait for a signal from your government? And as you said, consumer confidence is a part of this. So even though you could technically go and get your eyes checked or your teeth cleaned, should people, again, be waiting for some sort of a signal? And how will you build that consumer confidence within the economy here in BC?
Well, there are many sectors that closed down without any initiation from the public health office. I think of golf courses, for example. Dr. Henry at no time said that golf courses should close, but many did. And that was a decision that those companies and those operations made. Similarly, there are other operations that continue to go when they probably shouldn't have. It's absolutely critical that we get our dental services back up and running as quickly as possible, but that is a high-risk area, and Dr. Henry and her staff are working with the Dental Association on how best to get back into regular operation in that area. And we've asked, as I say, WorkSafe to work with public health officers to make sure that sector by sector we can have guidelines that companies and others can understand fully so that they can start to reopen in the days ahead. Why I've resisted as other provinces have done, laying out programs late in April for some time in the distant future is when people see governments starting to loosen the restrictions, they assume that that's game on. That's the green light to proceed to regular activity. That is not the case. We still have work to do in British Columbia. Dr. Henry will be tabling the results of her modeling next week. We'll take that to Cabinet, and that will form the final determinations on how our restart will begin. So I am not announcing today that the economy is going to go back to 60, 70, 80% of normal. I'm announcing today that we're very close to that, and we have also got the advantage that we did not shut down every sector as some provinces did. I think people need to take the message away today that we have work to do. Physical distancing is going to be here for a long time, and we need to get our head around that. We need to continue to wash our hands as regularly as possible, and if you're sick, you should not leave your home. You should certainly not go to a workplace. These are principles that we are going to have to embrace for the foreseeable future, not just until there's a formal plan to restart the economy.
Our next question is from Vaughn Palmer.
Good day, Premier. There's a report out of the University of Ottawa that says that Canadian provinces are in danger of having their finances overwhelmed by the strains